Muy bienvenidos a todos, a toda la prensa que se está sumando a este evento. Muchas gracias por sumarse a esta mesa redonda virtual que estamos llevando a cabo en el día del Red Hat Forum, el evento de código abierto más importante de Latinoamérica. Esperamos que todos estén pudiendo participar de este evento y saquen el máximo beneficio de los contenidos que se están compartiendo ahí. De todas maneras, los invitamos a visitar los contenidos que van a estar disponibles on demand durante un año, ¿sí? Desde hoy. Bueno, para Stefanie y para Adri tenemos periodistas registrados de Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Perú, Brasil, México, países de Centroamérica, así que gracias a todos nuevamente. Este formato virtual nos permite extender mucho más el alcance de nuestros eventos, así que estamos muy contentos con eso. En esta oportunidad nos acompaña Stefanie Chiras, que es vicepresidenta ejecutiva para la unidad de RHEL en Red Hat y una gran referente de la compañía y de la industria, y Adrian Cambareri, que es gerente de la unidad de RHEL para nuestra región, sí, para Latinoamérica. Nuestros invitados estarán respondiendo a sus preguntas en los próximos 45 minutos que va a durar esta llamada, para hablar, entre otras cosas, de un tema que a nosotros nos apasiona porque es la base fundacional de Red Hat, ¿sí? Sobre el sistema operativo Red Hat Enterprise Linux y todas sus bondades, todas sus virtudes y sus actualizaciones en el último tiempo. Dada la cantidad de asistentes que tenemos y para llevar un mejor orden, les pedimos que mantengan sus cámaras y micrófonos apagados. Vamos ahora mismo a habilitar el chat de esta aplicación en vivo, para que ustedes puedan poner ahí sus preguntas. Damián, de nuestro equipo de Relaciones Públicas, que ahí lo ven en cámara, va a estar tomando las preguntas de ustedes en el chat y va a moderar la conversación con Stefanie y con Adrián. ¿Okay? Por último, Damián estará dejando ahora en el chat una alternativa de conexión a través de Google Meet para que usemos en el caso de que esta plataforma presente algún inconveniente y nos podamos mover ahí. Pero por lo que vemos, viene todo bien, se viene funcionando muy bien. Así que, ahora sí, Dami, comenzamos entonces con una introducción, si te parece, de nuestros invitados y las preguntas anticipadas que ya recibimos de algunos periodistas, mientras invito de nuevo al resto a que vaya dejando sus preguntas en el chat ahora mismo, ¿ok? Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Andrés. Thank you very much, Stefanie and Adrian, for joining us today, and thank you all our fellow journalists for joining us today. We're very, very happy to have you here. And first of all, I'd like to ask you, Stefanie and Adrian, if you could give us a brief introduction about yourselves.
Sure. So why don't I start and I will pass it to Adrian. So as was already said, I lead the Red Hat Enterprise Linux business on behalf of Red Hat. And I really want to thank you for joining us today as part of the LATAM Forum. This is an important way for us to get a chance to interact with you, for the teams to get to interact with the LATAM market and understand that market better, certainly, and more deeply, and answer a lot of questions. Summit was a bit different this year, as are the forums, so we're trying to adjust and adapt to reach out. Perhaps just a couple of statements about the RHEL business and how we're strategically look at the RHEL business before I pass it over to Adrian. So the focus in RHEL remains consistent. We are very consistently driving for the needs, both the ecosystem as well as the features and the functions that are relevant to our customer set within the market that's rapidly changing. So as Red Hat doubles down on the focus on open hybrid cloud in order to deliver flexibility across an ecosystem and across technologies, we're very focused on making sure that we bring in new features and capabilities, as well as focus on an ecosystem that remains relevant in the market. We added a number of new things throughout since we actually launched RHEL 8 back now a year and a half ago when we first launched RHEL 8. Our focus there was really twofold, and we've continued on this. First was, how do we improve how you run your business today, focusing on things around efficiency and driving operational capabilities. And the second was really making sure that RHEL stood as a platform for you to innovate upon, doing things like container tooling directly into RHEL as the operating system. So we've done a number of things on both of those. We've continued to deliver in our minor releases. We are now 8.2 has been released. The 8.3 beta has been released, and we can certainly talk through a number of things that we have been evolving as RHEL 8 has evolved. In addition, RHEL has a unique role across the Red Hat portfolio. It also serves as that baseline Linux technology that underpins other sections of the portfolio, including OpenShift and OpenStack. So our goal as a portfolio company at Red Hat is to deliver one Linux platform experience and ecosystem to apply to all the footprints that are needed, as well as to make sure that whether you want to consume bare metal or containers, all of that is built upon that consistent Linux experience. And we leverage the whole portfolio to do that, building up to things like management and Ansible. So we're very much focused as RHEL as that base, but to deliver a portfolio experience that allows the open hybrid cloud. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Adrian, who really leads for my team our focus in the LATAM market and is very tightly tied to the needs of that market. So Adrian, I'll pass it to you.
Okay, Stephanie, thank you. I think I'm going to switch to Spanish. If there's anything that you would like to add, Stephanie, I can translate. There's no problem with that. Okay, gracias a todos por participar de esta reunión, de esta mesa redonda, en este año en un formato distinto al que hemos tenido en otras oportunidades. Supongo que algunos de ustedes han tenido la oportunidad de ver alguna de las presentaciones en las sesiones generales que tuvimos durante el fórum este día, y si no lo hicieron, los invito a que lo hagan. Ahí pusimos mucho hincapié en conversar y compartir con ustedes nuestra mirada tecnológica que gira en torno a este concepto de la nube híbrida, que la nube híbrida no es ni más ni menos que esta posibilidad que nos ofrece el mundo open source de crear entornos tecnológicos que permitan, por un lado, hacer más eficientes las realidades actuales en términos de tecnología y al mismo tiempo también adoptar la innovación. Y en ese contexto, Red Hat Enterprise Linux juega un rol central. ¿Sí? Es la plataforma que hace que esa nube híbrida compuesta de distintos formatos de infraestructura se comporte y pueda ser explotada y aprovechada por las áreas de TI, por los usuarios finales, de una manera consistente, con un conjunto común de capacidades y servicios. Entonces, a lo largo de esta reunión vamos a poder ir viendo esos temas, pero los invito nuevamente a ver este concepto de la nube híbrida y el rol central que juega Red Hat Enterprise Linux como la plataforma fundacional para que esa nube híbrida se materialice en la práctica en las áreas de infraestructura de nuestros clientes.
Muchas gracias, Adrian. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Well, right now we are going to start with some questions that we have had in advance. Thank you very much for that to all the journalists that have been in contact with us before. And but we want to invite you all to start making your questions in the chat in order to be able to make this a conversation, a two-way conversation. So we're going to start the first one from a media from Brazil that says Red Hat Enterprise Linux has already achieved the position of market-leading Enterprise Linux operating system. What are the next steps for RHEL, and what else is Red Hat planning to move forward with to fuel business transformation?
Great. So why don't I start? And then if I miss anything that's pertinent to the Brazil and certainly the LATAM market, then we can comment on that as well. So RHEL as an operating system has driven a lot of innovations and a lot of traction within the paid Linux operating system. According to Gartner, worldwide in the paid Linux operating system, we hold approximately 70% share of that. But again, when you look at the greater operating system market and what folks are running on, it's a much broader market than that, and there's a lot of changes going on. As we look at the transition from bare metal and virtual machines and migrating into containerization, right? That is a big transition that's going on in the market. One of the key things we're focused on is how do we help folks? When I talk to customers, one of the key hesitancies that customers feel is that lack of skill, right? How do I gain the skills in order to move from having VMs deployed and moving into containers deployed? It was one of the key reasons that we pulled in containerization tools directly into the operating system of RHEL, Buildah, Podman, Scopio, in order to help folks gain the skills within RHEL as they start that transition into likely a Kubernetes-based orchestration deployment of containers and moving into OpenShift. So I'd say from an operating system perspective, Linux maintains as the fastest growing operating system in the market, that's for certain. There's a lot of breadth in that market, including other operating systems, Windows and Unix. Our goal is to continue to deliver value that expands what is outside what I would say is the traditional operating system value, right? As customers look to what they want to do more broadly within a hybrid cloud environment, it's who are we partnered with? We have offerings in most of the major hyperscale data public clouds, so we continue to drive deployments there. We have focused on new innovation around capabilities in driving containerization is one example, making sure we added in a capability called application streams to make sure that those user space packages that continuously change and evolve, that those can be updated within RHEL without having to change that kernel. So that allows for faster innovation. We also have worked on things like universal base image. Universal base image is a freely available user space that can be used to build upon your ISV applications that you wish to containerize. It can be redistributed, and once that's run on either RHEL or OpenShift, is fully supported by Red Hat. So we're trying to make sure that we are focused on an ecosystem and a set of features and functions that are leading into the innovations that we're seeing move forward and pull everything we can into the operating system to start that journey. I'd say equally on the other side of that, we have moved, and you probably saw the announcements at this most recent summit. We started out with the launch of RHEL 8 with a capability becoming incorporated directly within the RHEL subscription called Insights. The goal of that was to provide an as-a-service link, which really takes the expertise that Red Hat has developed and all the knowledge we know about how to set up your systems in the most optimal configuration possible. How do we take all of that knowledge and we help you deploy that and get that value directly in your data center? So Insights is a capability that's done through cloud.redhat.com. When you have a subscription, you can, and it's in all supported versions of RHEL, it's available in all supported versions. You can link up that system and get insights as far as sort of what your configuration looks like, a view of your patches, are they updated, performance. And we really took that another step here in the most recent summit. We added in a whole set of additional features and capabilities, things like drift, monitoring drift of your systems to make sure that they're really staying in the most optimal performance. We added in something called vulnerability to look across your estate and be able to look at, are there CVE exposures? Things like compliance. There's a compliance now tool as part of Insights. So it's really blossoming into a suite of capabilities on cloud.redhat.com. Again, all incorporated and included within your current RHEL subscription, but it gives you a whole different level of operational efficiency that can be applied. In fact, one piece of that in cloud.redhat.com is something called Subscriptions Watch, which is now available. One of the direct feedbacks we got from customers was, how do I manage my, how do I get a visibility across all of my subscriptions? So we added in a capability called Subscription Watch, which will give you that sort of one view of all the subscriptions you're running, how you're deploying against the subscriptions you've purchased to make sure that you're using them in the most efficient way possible. So I would say, we're moving into this cloud.redhat.com, adding services and capabilities to augment operational efficiency. And the final third piece I would say is security. Back in October of last year, we made an announcement about our CVE policy. We had we run a very rigorous assessment of CVE classifications with criticals, importance, moderates. We had always committed to mitigate all criticals. Importance, however, we had some room, right, to say some importance would be mitigated, some would not. We changed that policy in October. It was not definitive enough based upon what customers gave us feedback, and we changed our policy. We updated our entire CVE touchpoint page to make sure that the information was much clearer for folks to understand the CVE classification model. And we made the commitment to mitigate all criticals and importance. So when I look across the things we're focused on and what's next, Linux continues to grow to deploy the next gen workload. So I see our focus continuing on delivering what's expected from a Linux operating system. And the places where we really are driving additional focus are the things like as-a-service capabilities for operational efficiency, continuing to focus on our ecosystem, and making sure security and resiliency is first and foremost. So with that, I'll pass it over in case I left anything out. And Adrian, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think it's you pretty much cover everything. I will only add a couple of comments regarding that. I'm going to switch to Spanish. Agregando a lo que mencionaba recién Stefanie, creo que es muy importante entender, como mencionábamos anteriormente, que justamente el rol de Red Hat Enterprise Linux es hacer viable, materializar esta mirada de nube híbrida que creemos es la que está adoptando la industria como el camino natural para poder evolucionar y transformarse, con lo cual las capacidades que Red Hat Enterprise Linux incorpora tienen que ver muchísimo con la innovación que se requiere en ese contexto para poder competir efectivamente y ser eficiente y al mismo tiempo ágil, y con habilitar el comportamiento de esa nube híbrida como una infraestructura tecnológica cohesiva. Y ahí van a encontrar cuestiones relacionadas, por supuesto, con la gestión, la eficiencia, la seguridad, las capacidades en términos de rendimiento, de prevención, como mencionaba Stefanie, alrededor de Red Hat Insights, que es nuestra plataforma para la gestión predictiva de entornos de Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Entonces, la mirada de cara al futuro avanza en esas dimensiones, en esas aristas.
Thank you very much, you both. Great answers. A lot to keep discussing. And in hand with this, another question from Chile is how should the role of an operating system be understood in a world that tends towards containerization and the Internet of Things?
So this is a great question. We clearly are focused that whether you look at an edge deployment, whether you look at an IoT deployment, whether you look at a containerization deployment, it still requires an operating system. When we look, I'll take containerization first and foremost. So the innovation of containerization, which is really a very novel technology that provides flexibility and consistency of deployment of applications, right? That's what it's about. How do I deploy an application in a way that is consistent? How can I deploy it in a smaller set so it's, quite honestly, more secure with less footprint available? How do I have it interact if I go down to microservices? So there's a lot of application value that happens there, as well as developing, right? A DevOps world gets a lot of value from it too. But at the end of the day, the Linux that sits within a containerized environment is equally, if not more important in your container environment than it was in your VM space or your bare metal space. And the reason that is because in the VM world, your operating system and your ISV and your hypervisor kind of sit neatly stacked upon one another. However, in the containerization world, you have a kernel, you have Kubernetes, which is intimately calling your kernel. It's very tightly tied. And then you have a container which contains the user space of your Linux. When you come down to the security and resiliency and capabilities of your Linux environment and operating system environment, now it relies on knowing your kernel, your Kubernetes interactions with that kernel, and that user space. We have focused very hard on making sure that the Linux experience that you know in RHEL is consistent as you move into an OpenShift experience. It's partly why our engineering teams between RHEL, which develops RHEL Core OS, which is included in OpenShift 4.0 and beyond, it's why that is intimately tied. So as I look at how the market is evolving, right, there is a perception that when I move something to a public cloud, because someone else is running that infrastructure and someone else is running that operating system, or if I move it to a containerization deployment where my operating system is not so easily visible, that it's not as important. We believe that it's equally, if not more so important then as it is when you're running in your data center. The added layer to this is the standardization of your operating system allows you to reuse skills and capabilities that you may have in-house, as well as the ecosystem partners that you have, so that having a RHEL for all your VMs in bare metal, moving into OpenShift built upon the same Linux technology when you run containers, and being able to run either OpenShift or RHEL in the public cloud or with a managed service provider, that consistency gives you operational efficiencies. So our goal is to try and make sure that the strategic decision of the operating system you choose brings you value in your scalability, your consistency, and your ecosystem. And so that's why we're really focused on not just the operating system, but how that feeds into the rest of our portfolio as a Red Hat portfolio, and then as an ecosystem that we interact with. So I love this question because it comes up so often in the world of that we live in today, where perhaps the operating system isn't so first and foremost. But if you want to prepare yourself to be able to consume the technologies that are coming down the pipeline, whether that be software as a service capabilities, whether it be containerization tools, whether it be public clouds and multiple public clouds, and perhaps emerging public clouds to manage services, a strategic decision about your operating system allows you to be ready to consume that technology when and if you so choose to do so.
So if you let me add something to that, Stefanie.
Certainly, Adrian, please.
To Spanish for that. Tomando un poco lo que mencionaba recién Stefanie, está claro que hay un proceso natural que observamos en la industria hacia la adopción de la tecnología de containers y también tecnologías de edge computing, como en este caso IoT, fue mencionado en la pregunta. Y si analizamos la manera en la que las áreas de TI y las áreas directivas de TI incorporan nuevas tecnologías a sus infraestructuras, vamos a ver que existen un conjunto de requerimientos y requisitos básicos que esas tecnologías deben cumplir para poder ser desplegadas en entornos empresariales. Es decir, no todas las tecnologías califican, ¿no? Cuestiones relacionadas con la seguridad, con la calidad, con el servicio, son siempre elementos que se toman en cuenta como elementos de juicio para determinar qué tecnología se va a implementar en un data center o en un área de TI de una organización. Y la realidad es que las tecnologías de containers y las plataformas de containers, con todo este auge que hoy tienen, no escapan a esta realidad, ¿sí? Las empresas siguen evaluando cuál de esas tecnologías conviene desplegar en sus data centers en función, por supuesto, de sus cualidades. Ahora, cuando pensamos en containers, y Stefanie refirió a esto, los containers son una construcción del sistema operativo. Es decir, los containers son una manera de empaquetar una aplicación con porciones del sistema operativo que ejecutan, a su vez, en el sistema operativo. Por lo tanto, cuando nosotros decimos que los containers son Linux, nos referimos precisamente a esto, que en ese container van a recibir porciones del sistema operativo, que queremos que esas porciones del sistema operativo sean seguras, sean confiables, se actualicen de manera consistente con una cadena de provisión segura, y que también deseamos que esos contenedores se ejecuten en un entorno seguro, confiable y escalable. Por lo tanto, cuando uno piensa en la decisión que va a tomar estratégica de una plataforma de containers a futuro, seguramente va a querer tomar esa decisión en función de una plataforma de sistema operativo que le brinde todas esas capacidades, ¿sí? Porque recordemos que los containers son Linux, entonces la decisión de una plataforma de containers está atada a la decisión del sistema operativo Linux. Y en ese aspecto claramente entran en juego todas estas consideraciones.
Thank you both very much for the very well explanation. And Dari from Computer World Colombia asks, how does RHEL and so Red Hat help companies face these new corporate challenges in this new reality?
Yes, the new reality is certainly a situation that we're all facing. So maybe I can let me talk about it from a product view first, and then we can talk about some of the things specifically to COVID that we have that we are engaged in order to drive this. I'd say COVID is an interesting time for companies to look at and reassess their vendor relationships, right? It's an interesting time to look at the relationships that you have with your vendors, the value that they're providing, because it's a time when making sure that you can be resilient and consistent through these ups and downs of what we're all going through, and things like remote work from home. How do we deal with that? And how do your vendors stand by you, right, and stand by their customers through this process? I'd say one of the things that we're focused on with Red Hat and certainly within RHEL is making sure that we are providing value from operational efficiency in what a customer deploys. We have really worked to make sure that we're adding capabilities so that customers are getting the most value they can out of it. It's why we're very focused on making sure that every customer who has a RHEL subscription today knows that they can connect to insights, can leverage that value for operational efficiency. No added cost, no added requirements. It's simply capability that is there and available for them. So we're very focused on making sure that we help customers understand the value they can get from the products they've already purchased. That has been a focus of ours since the beginning of the COVID pandemic, really about we're here to help. We have enabled things like making sure all our training capabilities are available online. We've offered assistance around things like having TAMs available at reduced cost to customers. We're continuing to try and roll up our sleeves side by side with customers and make sure that they're getting the value they need to be sustained through this current new reality we're in. I certainly think we have looked at, as an example, all of our life cycle, any really disruptive life cycle things. We made some changes to those to make sure that if it was challenging for customers to update to the next generation or to deal with a life cycle change, that they were able to move forward, right, with some added leeway, right? And so we did a whole portfolio analysis to look at our life cycle and make sure that any really disruptive changes, we were able to provide some help to customers. So I'd say collectively we have pulled together to try and assist customers through COVID. We, of course, it's been a change for us internally at Red Hat too. We were about 25% remote before, and then we kind of instantly went to 100% remote. So we transitioned through that as well, but certainly working to engage with our customers in a much more virtual way. We positioned Summit really quite quickly to make sure that we still delivered in May. So I'd say one of the things we're focused on is maintaining, really helping customers get every last value they can, having us deliver better capabilities around operational efficiencies, around training, around visibility to the value that they have, and really engaging in some of the other areas of culture that we work on with the communities. We've done call for code around COVID-related aspects. We've worked with communities around COVID-related aspects, and we've certainly been working with quite closely with some customers who are heavily focused on COVID-related. In fact, we had the Ministry of Health in Argentina, which is very focused on COVID, was one of our Innovation Award winners when they did quite amazing technology capabilities across leveraging the Red Hat portfolio, which allowed them to scale and deliver consistent capabilities at a time when certainly it's most needed. Adrian, anything you would add?
Yeah, I will touch on the Ministry of Health and give some more details about that because I believe it's important. Refiriéndome al Ministerio de Salud de Argentina, para dar un poco más de detalles respecto a cuál fue el abordaje que ellos tomaron en esta situación actual, en esta coyuntura. El Ministerio de Salud creó una infraestructura, una red común para todas las provincias de la Argentina, en la cual esa red permite comunicar los sistemas de salud de cada una de las provincias y hacer que las historias clínicas de los pacientes estén disponibles en cualquier parte del país, de manera tal que cualquier ciudadano pueda atenderse en cualquier punto del país, teniendo acceso inmediato a su historia clínica y teniendo esa flexibilidad. y eso es especialmente útil en este contexto. Y gracias a esa integración que realizaron en sus sistemas y al despliegue del portafolio de Red Hat para poder llevar a cabo esta misión, también han llevado a cabo y han elaborado un tablero de control de la situación de COVID a nivel nacional, que está disponible y que justamente lo que hace es mostrar la evolución de la situación en los distintos puntos del país, todo esto basado en este enfoque, en estas tecnologías.
Thank you very much. And well, going more into the hardware now, and in the midst of the code, how does RHEL support high performance computing across multiple architectures, and how should these collaborate to accelerate the digital transformation of enterprises? This question is from Brazil.
So high performance computing has always been an interesting space in the industry, largely because it serves as a bit of a tip of the spear for the capabilities and technologies of where hardware and software across different types of hardware, quite honestly, come together to deliver capabilities that perhaps are not needed at that level of scale in an enterprise, but either that it has to be done quickly, or it's just such an incredibly complex problem with vast amounts of data. That's where high performance computing really shines. And so I would say what we've seen in recent years, so last year the top two computers on the top Supercomputer 500 list was two systems built upon IBM Power Systems. Both of those ran RHEL, alternate architecture from x86. But we have been focused on having a multi-architecture focus for many years at Red Hat. It's part of what we stand behind around choice. Similar to how our open hybrid cloud story is very focused on choice of footprint, vendor, multiple cloud, et cetera, really providing that flexibility and choice. We've been equally focused on making sure that we support multiple architectures. This year, Fugaku topped the list of the top supercomputer list. And that is built on ARM technology. It also runs RHEL. Through tight partnerships, we have been able to participate across multiple spaces, whether it be x86, whether it be power architecture, or whether it be ARM capabilities. We have been able to really participate in that space because we've been focused on multiple architectures from day one, because we believe it provides flexibility to customers. Right? Part of the whole value of this hybrid space is being able to choose where, how, on what architecture, on what public cloud you get to run your workloads that make sense for your business. As we look at moving forward into how high performance computing can affect enterprise, I think there's never been a time when we have seen a more closer link between the advanced computing that's being done in data centers and enterprises around artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, that is driving really aggressive capabilities. So those hardware software connections that we see in the true high performance computing space are becoming much, much closer to those aggressive workloads being run in the enterprise. I think most recently Fugaku is interesting, being built upon ARM, because many of us think of ARM technology as being in a cell phone. And yet when built into an architecture and scaled at the level of Fugaku, it's incredible the capabilities that it can pull together based upon really well interlinked, well networked, scaled computing capability. So one has to ask themselves, that can be brought down into modular components. Those modular components can then be brought into the enterprise. So for decades now, I think high performance computing has been kind of this tip of the spear to drive unique integration between hardware and software, and to drive really aggressive computing capabilities on complex problems. We're seeing that directly sort of lead the way for enterprises. And I think I'm actually incredibly proud, coming from a hardware background myself, incredibly proud of the value that being able to have a choice in architecture has delivered value to not only the supercomputing space, but has the opportunity to drive changes in the enterprise space as well and deliver more choice for customers.
Great. Thank you very much. And well, the next question is about interoperability between RHEL and how does it work with the hybrid cloud?
Great. So let me. I want to take this in twofold because I think there's multiple ways to look at hybrid cloud as it has evolved, right? Our view of open hybrid cloud is all about choice and capability. It's about being ready to consume innovation and have flexibility to deploy your applications where and how you wish to do so. Certainly from a RHEL perspective, we are focused on making sure that RHEL is available to our customers in a way in how they want to consume and where they want to consume it. It drives our partnerships with many of the big cloud providers, whether it be IBM Cloud, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, right? We continuously expand, including a large number of managed service providers, which perhaps are more regional. So first off and foremost is to make sure RHEL is available both for folks to take their subscriptions that they've purchased from Red Hat and use them in the public cloud, also in cases where they choose to purchase it directly from the public cloud, if that's how they choose to consume it. So we are very focused on that sort of breadth. In addition to that, and I think Adrian mentioned this earlier, as hybrid cloud definitions expand, whether that be to things like edge, right? That becomes a new deployment model that perhaps is part of your broader hybrid cloud deployment strategy. We're focused on making sure that RHEL stays relevant with the ecosystem and the partners with how you would deploy edge capabilities. I'd say to step that up, however, one of the real magical things that we're seeing in the hybrid cloud space is the flexibility that folks want to be able to deploy their applications, to build and deploy applications. And that's where containerization becomes a really strong capability, right? To be able to create an application and move that across many aspects in your hybrid cloud. And that's where OpenShift plays, right? Our OpenShift, our Kubernetes-based container platform, it is built upon RHEL. Our teams deliver the Linux technology with RHEL Core OS that sits directly inside the product itself in order to provide that consistent experience from Red Hat. But OpenShift provides that linkage. We work with, again, the major cloud providers to make sure both you can get it managed from some of the major cloud providers. You can also take your OpenShift, leverage the cloud providers. You can run it on-prem. It's this flexibility that we're trying to drive in a hybrid cloud environment. So I'd say both from a platform perspective, whether it be RHEL, whether it be OpenShift, our goal is to make sure that we deliver the features and functions and we engage with the ecosystem that is relevant in order to drive a continuously growing set of capabilities for hybrid cloud. Adrian, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I will add a couple of comments. Bueno, la idea central de la nube híbrida abierta gira en torno a proveer un conjunto de capacidades, como mencionaba Stefanie, que tienen que ver justamente, ¿no?, con la capacidad de poder elegir, de innovar permanentemente, de lograr niveles superiores de eficiencia y de poder alcanzar niveles de flexibilidad que nos permitan de manera portable ejecutar nuestras aplicaciones críticas del negocio en aquel punto de la infraestructura tecnológica que más se adecue a las necesidades de esa aplicación. Entonces, la mirada tiene que ver con integrar distintas plataformas de despliegue que pueden ir desde servidores físicos hasta múltiples proveedores de nube pública, pero hacerlo de una manera tal de que todos esos servicios, todas esas capacidades que la nube híbrida promueve se mantengan y estén garantizadas. Si hacemos en cada uno de estos formatos de infraestructura o plataformas de despliegue, desde un servidor físico, como mencionaba, hasta distintos proveedores de nube, todas ellas tienen capacidades distintas, implementaciones diferentes, servicios distintos. ¿Cómo hacemos entonces para lograr que esa nube híbrida se comporte de manera cohesiva? Necesitamos abstraernos de las particularidades de cada uno de estos formatos de infraestructura para que el consumo de dichos formatos sea uniforme, sea consistente, para que, como mencionábamos, la promesa de la nube híbrida de poder desplegar aplicaciones en cualquier punto sea una realidad. Quien entrega esa capacidad de abstracción de las particularidades de las plataformas de despliegue subyacentes, brindando un servicio consistente, común, con niveles comunes de seguridad, de rendimiento, de escalabilidad, es Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Y a partir de esas capacidades, todo nuestro portafolio se integra y promueve y entrega mayor valor a los clientes y a los usuarios finales.
Thank you very much to both. Well, we have some more minutes, so I'm going to start finishing, as we say here. So from Colombia, we have a prospect question. So what is Red Hat's strategy to extend the use of the DevOps model to interconnect legacy and new infrastructure and cloud applications? And also in this way, which are the plans of Red Hat for 2021 in our region?
Perfect. So I will, I'll leave the regional question to Adrian, but perhaps I'd really like to touch on when we talk about we build within Linux, it really becomes from a portfolio perspective, I would say a layered approach. RHEL is responsible, we are responsible for creating an ecosystem down to the hardware, including the multiple architectures that we already talked about in order to provide choice at that layer. As we've looked to see this hybrid cloud model evolve, we have seen it move into containerization. And so we've bridged that into our OpenShift platform in order to provide containerization. Similar to our subscription model, right, which is about how we provide value that you use as you see fit, right? You update when you see it's important for you to update, but our goal is to continuously provide you value throughout the relationship of that subscription. When we look at these two platforms combined, in order to pull together and really get the value of that sort of fundamental technology enablement across multiple architectures, across multiple partners, this is where our management story really comes in. And helps bring scale and simplicity with our management around Ansible automation platform and bridging that across your deployments, whether it be in multiple clouds, using our ACM for cluster management capabilities. That's where it all gets pulled together as a portfolio story for Red Hat to really bring together the hybrid cloud in a unified way that is scalable and easier to manage. So I look at our pillars as having platforms, being able to do DevOps with capabilities, combining OpenShift and all the work that our runtimes team does and pulling that together into a really simple DevOps environment, and then overlaying upon that the management capabilities coming in from Ansible automation platform. Right? Clearly, we have capabilities like smart management on your RHEL infrastructure on-prem, but once you start to get to that broader hybrid cloud story, it's about bridging your DevOps environment on OpenShift with perhaps some of the things that are mission critical that are running on alternate architectures on your RHEL environment, or even perhaps bare metal for performance reasons, and being able to pull in managed services and using Ansible automation platform to bridge across that. We will continue to strive to make sure that these three legs of the stool continue to deliver a hybrid cloud experience that is relevant today and even more relevant as new technologies come down the pipeline tomorrow, next year, and for years to come. So our focus is really pulling together that portfolio with an ecosystem and keeping our eye on the market and listening to our customers about what matters to them. Adrian, do you want to talk a bit more about the regional answer?
Sí, cuando hablamos de estos conceptos en Latinoamérica, nosotros vemos un interés creciente respecto a los enfoques como DevOps y las tecnologías asociadas. ¿Sí? DevOps es un enfoque que tiene un impacto que excede claramente la cuestión meramente tecnológica y que abarca también los procesos organizacionales y podríamos decir hasta la cultura organizacional. Ninguna compañía puede evolucionar y adaptarse a la nueva realidad de los negocios y alcanzar los niveles de agilidad que se requieren para poder competir efectivamente en este contexto sin tener un abordaje integral de estos tres elementos, ¿sí? No es posible solamente evolucionar en una de estas tres aristas sin necesariamente crecer en las otras. Entonces, la tecnología, los procesos y la cultura organizacional deben crecer y evolucionar de manera concomitante. Y DevOps, de alguna manera, provee ese marco conceptual para que las organizaciones puedan lograr esos niveles de agilidad a la hora de crear sus soluciones y ofrecer servicios a sus clientes. Nuestro portafolio está concebido para habilitar esa clase de miradas, esa clase de enfoques con capacidades propias en nuestras plataformas, como mencionaba Stefanie, desde RHEL, pasando por OpenShift y Ansible Automation, que permiten y que nosotros denominamos que es el lenguaje de DevOps, pero por supuesto también tiene que ver con nuestros servicios profesionales y nuestras capacidades de consultoría para ayudar a nuestros clientes a adoptar esta mirada. Una mirada que nosotros también adoptamos en el desarrollo y la creación de nuestras tecnologías. DevOps es parte integral del enfoque que nosotros utilizamos para esa creación. Y en Latinoamérica creemos que el concepto de DevOps tiene mucha ascendencia y estamos observando muchísimo interés y tenemos muchísimas interacciones con los clientes referidos a estos temas.
Thank you very much. And well, for the last two questions, the first one is from Fernando from Impacto TIC in Colombia, and he says RHEL 8.2 was introduced in the middle of the pandemic, and as perceived by Red Hat, how are companies embracing new solutions in these uncertain times? Are they willing to invest in new solutions, or are they just focused on making what they already have more efficient?
So, so just to talk through that from the experiences that I've had in talking with customers, I'd say it's really quite mixed. I'd say our subscription model that we have, which is focused on making sure that our job is to provide capabilities that a customer can choose to use when it's useful for them. This subscription model is very useful in times of that we're facing right now, times of uncertainty. What I have seen is, and just to pull a bit of both extremes, depending upon the industry, depending upon the customer, some have focused in on making sure that that nothing changes, that everything runs reliable and resilient. With those folks, we're certainly trying to help them get the most out of their insights capabilities, get the most understanding about operational efficiencies that they can pull out of what they've already purchased in their subscriptions. This idea of, and when we announced RHEL 8, right, we announced a very discrete cadence that we were going to deliver on, and this was because customers asked for it. The feedback we got was that our delivery model for majors and minor releases was unpredictable, and it did not allow customers to plan. So when we launched RHEL 8, we announced that we would have majors every 3 years, minors every 6 months. Even through COVID, we have held to that because we wanted to make sure that the consistency we committed, we delivered upon. I do think that there are customers who are not updating as quickly as they would like, and that's part of the flexibility that the subscription model provides. I will say that there are other customers who are using this time in order to help expand skills, for example, within their teams, having their teams use this time when they're all remote to improve their skills space. We have been enabling training as part of that in order to help proliferate that. We have also seen folks say, okay, with business now slowed, we're going to focus a bit on doing some migrations and updates. That was too hard when our business was running full force, and we're going to do these migrations and pivot them now. So I think one thing that we've learned through this whole COVID pandemic and change is that now more than ever, the response is very custom and very dependent upon the needs of the individual customers. It's one of the things that I think our subscription model has been very well suited for us to work with our customers. We'll deliver the capability, we'll work with the customers to have them adopt it when it's right and fit for them, and I've seen that vary across the customer space based upon industry and business dynamics.
Thank you very much. Adri, would you like to add anything or?
No.
Okay. Great. Well, and last but not least, so what is this is double, which is the strategy to approach the leaders who are the one who ultimately lead the transformation and adoption of these technologies? And after this, I would like to, Javier from Prensa Económica said he would like a final and personal reflection on how you both see the future of technology after the pandemic.
Great. So the first question, Damian, could you just repeat that?
Sure. Yes, it says, which is the strategy to approach the leaders who are the ones who ultimately lead the transformation and adoption of these technologies?
I think one of the things, we of course in REL have been engaged very heavily in the IT teams of companies. I think what we're seeing as hybrid cloud gets adopted and Kubernetes is driving this is a different set of decision dynamics happening. Developers are often coming in and they're coming in requesting a Kubernetes-based environment. We're also seeing in many customers hybrid become something that happens to customers rather than them strategically tackling it, right? Perhaps a development team goes off and starts doing development in a public cloud and suddenly the environment is hybrid. I think our discussion now with our portfolio statements, building upon what we talked about earlier, having everything from platforms to container-based platforms into the Ansible and management automation space, pulling all that together is our focus is working with those leaders who are driving really to move into this age of the digital economy, making sure that they're ready for the next steps and are able to sort of take the view across both what the decisions they have to make now, particularly in light of COVID, right? But there are certainly economic challenges in many businesses and industries. There's certainly challenges in some cases to get at your infrastructure to do things like updates and changes. But how do they balance that and make some strategic decisions to help them prepare for the changes that they want to go forward? So we're very focused on making sure that our open hybrid cloud portfolio really delivers on what a customer needs to do today, what they are going to want to do tomorrow, and bringing that discussion up to a level where they're able to make a consistent view across the customer and across their whole infrastructure set to make sure they can impact that standardization value across public cloud, across on-prem, across containers, across edge, and pull of that all together. So it is a different level of discussion. Decisions are being made much broader in a company than perhaps they were before, but there is real value to having strategic and standardized decisions be made at some levels that allow flexibility and choice going forward. I'd say perhaps a personal reflection on, and then I'll pass it to Adrian. As we have looked at, I think prior to COVID, we all looked at the industries, and it was interesting to see that almost every company, no matter what industry you were in, was a technology company, right? Because technology was really enabling a whole breadth of competitive capabilities, and so many companies that never thought they would be so concerned about their software or writing their own applications were really becoming technology companies. I think the capabilities or the challenges that we're seeing in COVID really highlight the need for those capabilities going forward. It is a balance of making decisions that are not just here for the near term and what has to be done in the next 6 months and what has to be done in the next 9 months. Clearly, those requirements are important, but it's also the sustainability of having the choice going forward. This was unexpected. I never expected not to be traveling for 9 months in a row, right? I never would have foresaw that coming. So I think it highlights the fact that we don't know what's coming. It could be a new great technology coming down that hasn't hit the market yet. It could be a new capability. It could be a new challenge that we all tackle. I think what we've learned is that technology is a great enabler in order to prepare for consuming change and innovation. It used to be about making one change at a time. Now it's really about preparing for change, and technology is an underpinning for that. And so we continue to believe that Open Hybrid Cloud provides you the most flexibility in moving forward with that, but never have we been faced with something, I think, globally that has caused us to relook at how do we prepare for change rather than tackle one change at a time. And we're focused on making sure that we deliver technology that enables that. Adrian, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. Sí, es muy en línea con lo que menciona Stefanie, una reflexión personal respecto a la situación que estamos atravesando e indudablemente también en cómo imaginamos que esa situación será una vez que esto concluya. Está claro que ninguno de nosotros esperábamos esta situación, pero creo que la situación no hizo más que exacerbar tendencias que veníamos observando en la industria, ¿sí? Todas las compañías estaban enfocadas en lograr niveles superiores de agilidad, en adaptarse a los cambios, en ser capaces de competir a partir de los servicios que ofrecían a sus usuarios finales, y estos servicios siempre estaban dados en forma de servicios de software, con lo cual todas las compañías de alguna manera estaban apuntando a convertirse en compañías capaces de crear y entregar software de manera rápida y ágil. Y la pandemia indudablemente aceleró estos procesos. Por un lado, con la necesidad concreta de ser cada vez más eficientes, ¿sí? frente a los desafíos económicos y financieros que presenta la situación, y por otro lado también habilitando innovación para lograr esos niveles de agilidad que se requieren para competir. Muchas compañías se enfocaron en ambas cosas al mismo tiempo, ¿no? Durante este proceso, y yo creo que una vez finalizado el ritmo y la aceleración en la adopción de estas nuevas tecnologías y en la búsqueda permanente de eficiencia va a ser cada vez más grande. Está claro que para poder innovar es necesario primero ser eficiente. Sin ser eficiente es difícil contar con las herramientas humanas, de presupuesto para poder incorporar innovación. Entonces, creo que una de las cosas que la pandemia trajo para las organizaciones es que las ayudó a entender que es imprescindible estar preparado para cambiar y para adaptarse rápidamente. A eso nos referimos cuando hablamos de agilidad, inclusive cuando esos cambios no sabemos cuáles van a ser, porque no los podemos prever. Pero sí nos organizamos como empresa para adaptarnos al cambio que venga. Y desde la perspectiva tecnológica eso tiene implicancias, ¿no? Y justamente nuestro portafolio de nube híbrida abierta apunta a habilitar a las empresas a que puedan ser más eficientes e incorporar innovación para poder cambiar permanentemente y adaptarse a los nuevos desafíos.
Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias a todos por participar. If there's anything else you would like to add, if not, Andy, thank you very much for everything.
I think that we can close. It's great. You are so clear that it's great to have you both in this call. So thanks for the invaluable input. Yeah, thank you very much for participating in this. Muchas gracias a todos los periodistas que pudieron participar. Les vamos a estar haciendo llegar la grabación de esta entrevista a través de las agencias de relaciones públicas para que puedan ahondar en más detalles si necesitan, y como siempre estamos todos en contacto. Thank you all very much. See you soon.
Yes, stay well, everyone. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.